Hey YouTube, what's up? Coming at you with a little different video here. So today I kind of wanted to talk about one of the tools that pretty much every single one of us has in our shop every single day. Even if you don't work with your hands and you work on your feet, I feel like this is something that just kind of accumulates for all of us. Over the years, it can get kind of overwhelming, or even something you just sort of get unbothered by. You just can't be bothered with, and we might be leaving something on the table by that. So today I kind of want to talk about boots. Now, every single one of us has heard the old head on the job site talk about, if you're going to spend money anywhere, spend money on your boots and your mattress, because you're going to spend more of your life in either of those than you are anywhere else. And you know what? There's something to that. In particular, I'm 6'6", currently around 280. Been bigger, I've been smaller. And I spend anywhere between 10 and 16 hours a day on my feet. And so I am typically doing that not just on a smooth, even surface. I'm usually out on trails, job sites, up and down everywhere. I really tend to put boots through the ringer, and I know just about every working guy says that, oh yeah, I really tear through boots, and it's almost like a badge of honor. That's not really what I'm getting at. I still try and take care of my stuff. Every single one of these is a significant investment in cost over the years. Most of us, we get things like boot allowances that kind of help offset that cost, but I don't know too many boots that are of sufficient quality for my needs that are within my boot allowance, so I still end up spending more than that. It just sort of helps. I'm sure most of you are out there kind of a similar situation. But where I really wanted to get to was kind of my developmental philosophy, how I've purchased boots in the past, how I've kind of dealt with all of the boots I've ended up acquiring over the years, and really just what that progression has looked like to kind of get an understanding of a progression or a pattern, a piece of any of this that might actually help you make decisions that will, in effect, pay back dividends and in no small way really return back the investment in them, in your work productivity and your quality of life. You've still got to go to work. You've still got to earn your paycheck. And you've still got to get up and do it again the next day. This is an incredibly important part of that whole process for most of us. So this is just a small sample, pretty much what I could fit on the bench of the boots I've ended up acquiring over the years. All of us go through them, tear through them, and keep getting more. It's just something that keeps piling up. So I'd kind of like to sort of walk through and kind of explain why each one of these earned a spot on my bench today. Now, I know there's a million other YouTubers that get into cutting things in half, that get really into the cobbler side, that get really into the workwear side, that really get into the aesthetic side. I think I'm like most of us. I'm somewhere in the middle of there. I appreciate craftsmanship. I appreciate value. I like it when those things can converge. I'm willing to make concessions where some of those things might take a higher priority than the others. And this is just sort of what I've developed and has kind of worked for me. So most guys like myself are really looking for a happy medium for most of this. We understand that the highest tier of boots exist. Maybe we've tried them, maybe we haven't. And we understand that the lowest tier of boots exist. We've probably tried those and have our own horror stories from them. And we try and find something that ends up not breaking the bank, because this is a continuous investment that we're going to have to keep making over and over again throughout the course of our careers, because things wear out. And so these are my daily drivers right now. I started breaking them in fresh in April at the start of the season. These are a new model for me, but many of the things that I've come to find are what I just tend to look for in a boot, given what I do in my circumstances, my environment, and my experience. So these ones are Thorogood 804 42 48s, and they have really been the culmination of a lot of things that I've been looking at, and I have generally enjoyed them above and beyond as kind of my new daily driver boot. For me, Thorogood is a brand that I've been with since I was 19. I got my first pair when I was working maintenance for my alma mater back in college. And they were the first really good quality. Like, I'd had Wolverines and a few other sub $200 boots over my life. But once I had started working maintenance that summer, I had the disposable income I wanted to reinvest, and it really made a world of a difference. And Thorogood just sort of has really done well for me. And so I have been enjoying their products for over 10 years now. So these ones in particular, all of mine are going to be safety toe. It's a requirement for where I work. It's what lets me get my boot allowance. So all of these are going to be a safety toe model. These ones in particular have the waterproof liner. They are a round toe, 8-inch tall. I always go for at least an 8-inch tall boot. And the nicest part is, now I don't know off the top of my head which Vibram sole this is, but it is a Vibram sole. And if you know anything about Thorogood boots, they have not always used Vibram soles. This has been an absolute step in the right direction for me as somebody who predominantly works in the field, down trail, not typically on man-made surfaces, out in the woods, sometimes putting in quite a few miles, sometimes carrying quite a bit of weight over those miles. This isn't necessarily everybody's typical job site, and I love them. But then that begs the question, what are these? They're sitting right next to them. They're a completely different philosophy. Well, these are a pull-on. Now, believe it or not, these are also a Thorogood boot. The model on there, I believe I might be able to get into the sticker there, is the 804 4330s. I've similarly loved these boots. When I was working as the small engine heavy equipment mechanic in a more traditional shop environment, especially through the winter, I wanted something that was still, again, waterproof, lining at the very minimum, that didn't have laces that went up for snow and slush and everything else like that, and something that I could pretty easily just slide off and on at the beginning and end of the day, and were just comfortable to walk around, particularly on things like concrete, especially when your body's used to walking on natural materials and then you spend 12 hours walking on concrete. Your body feels it, particularly when you start getting north of 250. And these have been a phenomenal boot in a completely different use case. They don't lace down. They're not as tight. They breathe better. They're better in hot weather. They're just loose and comfortable. I will say they don't have a particularly aggressive tread on them. That is a Thorogood proprietary sole. And other than on the heel there, which I tend to wear things out on the heel quite a bit anyway, they've held up great. This has got about 2 years on them. I've worn them for lighter duty field work, just being in and around shop environments, and they're an incredibly comfortable off the clock boot. I'll wear them on and off the clock interchangeably. That gets me to these. Now, these are my Knicks. I got them, probably 5-6 years ago. They've had one resole on them already. I've got to send them back in for another. I got these when I started doing Wildland Fire. I'd been aware of Knicks. Got it. Been aware of Knicks since, the first Wrangler Star videos back in the day when he kind of went and toured everything. And I would have liked to have tried them. I just didn't have a reason for it. And then eventually my life kind of caught up and I got into doing Wildland Fire. So obviously I need a Wildland Fire boot. And these have been incredible. They are just on a different order of magnitude compared to any of the others. They're also at a very different order of magnitude and price. You can actually see here a repair that I had to do a few years ago. I was splitting firewood up on a hillside. I was front country. I wasn't too far away from anything, and it was about a 25, 26 inch standing dead oak that I dropped and was bucking in place and splitting because the rounds were heavy enough. I didn't want to carry the whole rounds down the hill. And long story short, axe took a weird kind of ricochet off of a knot in there. I'm tall enough to where if I'm not always completely squatted down at the bottom of my cut, the axe handle isn't long enough. It was only a 36 inch handle. And I kind of buried the head of the axe in my leg while wearing my Nicks. I was not particularly happy, but I ended up, since I had a background in leathercraft to begin with, just from it being something that's been done for 3 generations before me and my family, I got just some tarred bank line, and I did what was called a French seam in there. So it actually, because the leather's thick enough, you can go out halfway through the leather, and then you don't have all those seams on the back rubbing on you. So I've been wearing them ever since. They're still sturdy. They still hold. It's not in a particularly high stress area, and it's been working. But I don't wear these all the time. They're not lined. They're just raw leather, and that feels great in the heat when you can let your feet breathe. But that doesn't help you when the ground is wet. When you're walking through a lot of puddles, when all of the foliage is wet, pretty quickly, even with a full tongue, your feet get wet. So I tend to wear these in drier conditions. I also tend to wear them when I know I'm gonna be on my feet for a really long time, particularly if they're hard surfaces. Ironically, out of all of my boots, when I was working retail as a department head for a outdoor power equipment, auto and marine section at a retail store, and also the interim shop supervisor and doing more of the small engine repairs for them, these were what I wore in a retail setting, my super overbuilt Wildland fire boots. Because the human body isn't really made to be walking on concrete for 8-10 hours a day. It worked out well for me. Then I get to these. Now, these are actually 2 of the oldest pairs that I have. I guess this one's not particularly old, just a previous hard miles situation. These are the 3898s, the 804 3898s, and I've had probably 3 or 4 pairs of these over the years. These are just the most recent ones that I retired, and the ones that retired to be replaced by these. And you can see where they tend to fail for me. They're still a waterproof steel toe, 8-inch style design. I do like having the more tread, though this one wore off quite quickly. I can't say that. I mean, I put a lot of weight on it and probably got 2 seasons out of them. But where they tend to fail for me is in the toes here, because whenever you're tying lines on concrete docks especially, it's a real rough surface. So you're constantly taking a knee to secure your mooring lines and or doing dock repairs all day, hanging off the edge of it, putting up whalers and stuff. So you wear out the toes. This one, it's a false mock toe, so the stitching isn't integral, but it's pretty well worn this out and split the toes out pretty good. And now to most people, they'd say that's about it, time to throw them out. And I will say, these are about halfway. I don't think I would get much more out of them, but my plan is I've got a cobbler that I like to go to. I'll take this in, I'll get it resoled and with the cap toe. And what I'm planning on resoling them with is actually a wedge sole, because I have had wedge soles in the past. I do like them for whenever I'm doing roofs. I do like them on concrete. They have a place. They're not great grip for when I'm out on the trail, but that doesn't mean that I haven't appreciated having them before and wouldn't mind having them again. So what I'll probably do is I'll get them sent in and get them swapped out with a black wedge sole. That way they're black and brown, they're still within uniform code for where I work. And I'll have them do a set of tough toes on here because this leather's probably awfully thin. And they're gonna be another work boot. They're gonna last one more sole. They might not see daily use, but they're gonna keep working. They've been good. That's what I did with this pair. Now this pair, I've had longer than any other pair on this bench by, probably about doubled. I've had this probably about twice as long as I've had any other pair on this bench. These were the first pair of boots when I just got out of college and had started working in the factory. I had started out getting a new pair because the set that I had had for maintenance at the college had finally been wearing out after 3 years. And so I'd gotten this pair, and I wore those completely out. And when I did that, the round toe leather was still in pretty good shape. And so what I've done is I went to that same cobbler and I had him put on a Vibram lug sole. Now, I wore these and I still will come back to wearing them more casually. Typically when I knew I was gonna have a lighter day at work, or I had to be at a work function in uniform, so I needed to still be in dress or in boots. But you wanted something a little bit nicer because you knew that big wigs were coming, or that you weren't really gonna be kicking it out in the field. It was gonna be something a little different. And I've worn these, God, now 8 or 9 years. And they're getting about time. I don't think they're gonna last to another sole. Some of these splits in the welt are getting pretty good. Some of the tears in the leather is getting there. But what I didn't do when they wore out the first time was throw them away. For about $120, I got somebody else to breathe new life into it, and then I've taken care of it and utilized it in a different role. That's how I plan on utilizing that pair of boots. That's how, when I stopped necessarily doing as much wildland fire, I reoriented the way that I was using these boots because I already had them. In the same way that when I wanted to try something else different, something away from my normal paradigm for a completely different application, I tried these and found that they were incredibly successful in that application. Why, when I was looking at the calendar or the catalog for boots, because I had another boot allowance come up, and I found these with all new features and features that I already was looking for and knew that I appreciated, already available from the factory, not something that I had to try and get through a certain half-life with, and then if they survived, get them upgraded to something that I could come out the gate with, something that I could hit the ground running with. And I found those. And I've probably got half a dozen other boots that I've just accumulated over the years that have been resold, reused, taken out of daily services on the shelf in case I need to bring them back in for a different job type or for a different activity. I've still got them ready. They're still perfectly good. And most importantly, they are where the rubber meets the road. These are the articles of clothing, really the tools that allow me to be able to navigate my environment and my surroundings. So yeah, I invest, not always to the nth degree, but to the necessary degree for sure, that allows me to be able to navigate my environment, do what I do, be able to work, be able to get back up the next morning and do it all over again. So, and most importantly, I'm not taking that investment lightly. I still keep things around. I still find a way to rebuild and repurpose, find new applications to reuse things. And if only by a byproduct of how I tend to approach the world, whether that be my toolboxes, my different tool kits, my different capacities, different jobs that I enter, they all turn into these interconnected systems with tiers and structures. And that allows me a certain latitude to be able to fully utilize some of these investments that I've made in this application, to be able to really just competently navigate my ecosystem. And that's what this has turned into. So just like all the other aspects of my life that I've shown this far, I've brought this into a system level discussion just from boots, just what we all have to wear to go out and earn a living every day. So I'm not sure if that is necessarily going to change some minds or spark some interest in a subject. I just wanted to explain kind of how I've progressed in a system that sort of worked for me. So if this in any way mirrors your experience or is completely different, I'd love to hear. We all do very different jobs. We all accumulate very different experience, have very different needs, and very different preferences. So let me know down in the comments if any of this interests you, is applicable, if you've got your own story. I'd love to hear it. That's all I've got for today. So if you like what you see, like, subscribe, do what you got to do. I'll see you all in the next one.